Before you take another multivitamin, watch this. Let me ask you a question. Are you taking a multivitamin every day? If so, why? Well, maybe it's because you've heard that multivitamins are good for you, or you might have been told by your doctor to take one. But what if I was to tell you that all of that is not necessarily true? What if I also told you that over 99% of people are actually taking the wrong multivitamin? And what if I told you that multivitamins are actually one of the most common drug-herb interactions that we see in practice? As a clinical pharmacist with over 20 years' experience, I'm going to be sharing with you the truth about multivitamins. I'm going to debunk some myths, share with you how absorption of nutrients work in your body, the risk of toxicity, and finally reveal the one vitamin that you should absolutely avoid. But before I get into that, let me explain what multivitamins are. Multivitamins contain more than one vitamin. They may contain essential minerals as well as other nutrients like amino acids, fatty acids, probiotics, enzymes, botanical herbs, or even homeopathic remedies. Multivitamins can either be prescription or non-prescription products. Prescription multivitamins usually contain higher amounts of vitamins and minerals than non-prescription products. Now that we've established what a multivitamin is, let's look at the different types of multivitamins available to us. There are two main types of multivitamins, synthetic and whole food. Synthetic multivitamins, also known as man-made vitamins, are manufactured in chemical labs. Whole food vitamins, on the other hand, are extracted from natural sources such as fruits, vegetables, meat, or fermented foods. So, which one should you choose? Well, here are 4 important points to consider. The first point concerns bioavailability. Bioavailability refers to how much of the nutrient you actually absorb and utilize in your body. When a nutrient has high bioavailability, this means that your body can absorb and use a large percentage of the nutrient. On the other hand, when a nutrient has low bioavailability, only a small percentage of the nutrient is absorbed and utilized by the body. Generally speaking, synthetic vitamins tend to have higher bioavailability compared to whole food vitamins. This is because synthetic vitamins are isolated chemical compounds that are more easily recognized and absorbed by the body. Whole food vitamins, on the other hand, are more complex and harder for the body to break down and absorb. For example, if we compare the bioavailability of iron in a synthetic multivitamin versus one from a whole food source, we can see that the synthetic version has a bioavailability of around 400, whereas the whole food version is much lower at around 4. However, just because synthetic vitamins have higher bioavailability doesn't automatically mean that they're better. This is because synthetic vitamins tend to be less stable and more likely to cause toxicity. Toxicity occurs when you consume too much of a nutrient, causing adverse effects. Toxicity is rare with most vitamins and minerals when we're talking about whole food vitamins, but it is more common with synthetic vitamins because they tend to be more concentrated. Which brings me to my next point, vitamin imbalances. When you take a synthetic multivitamin, you're getting high levels of a standardized amount of each vitamin and mineral. This means that the balance of nutrients closely resembles that of a typical multivitamin. This is problematic because the ratios of nutrients in our diets do not resemble a typical multivitamin. For example, if we compare a Centrum Silver, which is a very popular multivitamin, with an average diet, we can see that the ratio of calcium to magnesium is off. The same is true for potassium to magnesium, phosphorus to magnesium, and calcium to zinc. Not only that, but there's also too much iron, copper, and we don't know what this does. These imbalances can cause problems, especially with minerals, because unlike vitamins, minerals tend to work together. An imbalance of any one mineral can disrupt the balance of the entire network, leading to an increased risk of certain diseases and conditions. On the other hand, whole food vitamins tend to have a more balanced ratio of nutrients that closely resemble whole foods. This is because whole food vitamins come from natural sources, where nutrients already exist in their natural ratios. My third point relates to the absorption of nutrients. As I've already explained, synthetic vitamins tend to have higher bioavailability than whole food vitamins. However, this doesn't mean that your body will absorb and utilize more synthetic vitamins than whole food vitamins. You see, in order for your body to absorb and utilize a nutrient, it needs to be in the right chemical form. For example, when it comes to calcium, there are many different forms of calcium, and your body can only absorb and utilize certain types. In fact, out of the many forms of calcium, only 30% of calcium citrate, 60% of calcium lactate, 35% of calcium gluconate, and 85% of calcium carbonate is absorbed and utilized by the body. When we compare these percentages with whole food sources of calcium, such as milk or yogurt, we see that your body can absorb and utilize around 30 to 40% of the calcium. The reason for this difference in absorption rates is due to the different chemical forms of calcium found in these sources. For example, milk contains a high percentage of calcium caseinate, which is a protein-bound form of calcium that is harder for your body to absorb and utilize. However, milk also contains lactose, which enhances the absorption and utilization of calcium. So overall, your body can still absorb and utilize a good amount of calcium from whole foods. The same concept applies to other nutrients, such as iron, magnesium, and zinc. Certain chemical forms found in whole foods can enhance or reduce the absorption and utilization of these nutrients. My final point relates to the cost of multivitamins. Generally speaking, whole food vitamins tend to be more expensive than synthetic vitamins. This is because they're more complex to manufacture and they contain fewer nutrients compared to synthetic vitamins. So based on these 4 points, what's the conclusion? Should you be taking a synthetic or a whole food multivitamin? Well, based on the evidence, whole food vitamins are the better option. Here's why. Yes, synthetic vitamins may have higher bioavailability, but they also have lower stability and a higher risk of toxicity. Additionally, they tend to create more imbalances not only between the vitamins and minerals in the multivitamin, but also between the vitamins and minerals in the food that you eat. On the other hand, whole food vitamins may have lower bioavailability, but they also have greater stability and a lower risk of toxicity. Plus, they have a more balanced ratio of nutrients, making them a better option overall. But there's one last thing that you need to know about multivitamins, and that's the one vitamin that you should absolutely avoid: vitamin E. Most multivitamins contain alpha-tocopherol as the type of vitamin E. Alpha-tocopherol is a synthetic form of vitamin E that has been heavily promoted for its antioxidant properties and supposed health benefits. However, recent research suggests that alpha-tocopherol may not be the best form of vitamin E to take as a supplement. In fact, some studies suggest that taking alpha-tocopherol may be harmful, increasing the risk of certain cancers and cognitive decline. Instead, it's recommended to take a more natural and balanced form of vitamin E, such as tocopherols or tocopherols and tocotrienols. These forms of vitamin E are more stable and have a lower risk of toxicity. They also have a more balanced ratio of nutrients and a better safety profile. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone you care about. And remember, just because something is labeled as a multivitamin, it doesn't mean that it's healthy. Always read the label and make sure that it contains whole food vitamins. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.